Sometimes the best stories in golf aren't found on tour. You'll find them at the back of the range. And here's your host, Ben Adelberg.
Thank you again for joining me here at the Back of the Range Golf Podcast. I'm your host, Ben Adelberg. This is episode 36. That voice you just heard, yep, that is still Mitch Phillips doing the intro work for us around here. Can't thank him enough for doing that. He does voiceover work for Showtime and Fox. If you want to learn more about Mitch and where he does his work, check him out at mpvoice.com. Another week down. Hard to believe that we're only a month away from the Ryder Cup. The teams are starting to take shape. I know that everyone is excited to see who's going to be getting the captain's picks for both USA and Europe. Lots of things are actually taking shape around here for the next couple weeks. We have some incredible guests coming up. One in particular that I think everyone will enjoy. Oh my gosh, I haven't even recorded that one yet. It's going to be insane. But I don't normally tease the episodes too much here. I kind of save that for Instagram and Facebook. But you know what the hell? Next week, here at the Back of the Range Golf Podcast, in honor of college starting up again, well, we have Coach Alan Bratton from the Oklahoma State University Cowboys. He led them to the national championship last year. We will talk all things OSU golf next week here at the Back of the Range, so stay tuned for that. Don't forget, every Tuesday is Free Towel Tuesday on Instagram. So if you're not following us, we're at the Back of the Range Podcast. We have these great caddy towels with our logo on them. We are just getting rid of them as quickly as possible. We want to get them in your hands so you can promote the podcast, put them on your bag, tag us on Instagram. That's what we need you to do. So keep a lookout. You never know. You might just win some free stuff. Just our little thank you for supporting the podcast. You know what else might actually get you a free towel? Leaving a review in Apple Podcasts. So if you leave a review, take a screenshot of it and send it to us, whether it's on Facebook or Instagram, or even email it to us, ben@thebackoftherange.com. Hey, you never know. You might just get yourself a free towel that way. And there's all sorts of stuff laying around here. Ball markers, divot tools, head covers, koozies. There's stuff all over the place. We're just giving it all out. So reach out to us, let us know what you think of the podcast, and we'll send you something. Don't forget, when you tell people about the podcast, tell them you could find us in Apple Podcast and Spotify. Central hub of the podcast, where you can learn all about it, listen to all the previous episodes, head over to thebackoftherange.com. So on to this week's episode. Last week, we had Sheena Willoughby from the Dunvegan on the podcast. She previously owned this amazing pub in St. Andrews. Well, I recorded 2 episodes when I was there. So this week's guest is Hannah Fleming from the British Golf Museum. The British Golf Museum is located just to the right of the first tee of the Old Course. How'd you like to have that view at your job? Anyway, Hannah is the assistant curator at the museum. Pretty cool job. She's responsible for, well, she has a lot of roles over there, whether it's leading an outreach program to bring artifacts from this great game to schools all around Scotland, or perhaps moving trophies out of the museum for R&A functions, or perhaps giving the Claret Jug just one last polish before handing it over to Francesco Molinari. She really does it all at the British Golf Museum. Now, this is an episode that you might want to be in front of a computer for, and here's why. I took plenty of photos while I was walking through the museum to serve as sort of a visual supplement to this podcast. I know this is an audio medium and pictures don't necessarily help, but I'm going to upload all of the photos on our Facebook page and Instagram page. So if you hear Hannah and I talking about something specific in the museum, whether it be the Claret Jug or young Tom Morris's belt, or maybe some old golf clubs, you might want to take a look at those pictures because they'll tie in nicely to the episode. All right, let's get started. Hannah, thanks for taking the time here at the British Golf Museum to join me at the Back of the Range Golf Podcast.
Thank you, Ben. A pleasure to be here.
So, there's people here that are living in St. Andrews, whether they're caddies that are on the Old Course every single day, or they're the gatekeepers at the starter shack that get people out onto the golf course. It's the experience of a lifetime. Tell me about your unique job title here in St. Andrews. What do you do here?
Well, I'm a museum and heritage assistant curator. I'm not fully a curator. But
well, after this episode,
yeah,
it's guaranteed, right?
You promoted me, which
I have that kind of power, So you're...
I'm delighted about that. Okay. But yeah, so I work for the British Golf Museum. I'm one of the curatorial team, but we have responsibility for collections relating to the R&D as an organisation, as well as the Royal and Ancient Golf Club of St Andrews, so that within the clubhouse, all of the objects, artwork, all the archives relating to the club's history, as well as the objects on display that visitors can see in the museum. But basically my job is, to be a curator, you're basically there to look after the objects and make sure that nothing bad happens to them. And
I don't know what you mean by that, but
that nobody steals anything. But for my role, I do a bit of everything. To be honest, I advise on events and things like that, run events, create events for children and adults within the museum. We also do our learning and outreach for schools, and that crosses over with our colleagues within the R&D as well. So there's a lot of crossover between departments within the organisation. So we promote the championships within schools, so with the amateur, the open championship, and now the women's events as well, the Women's Open, and
sure.
In the future I hope we do that, and the Ladies Amateur we are do schools activities, and basically I go into schools with the replicas of the championship trophies and do assemblies, and really try and excite children in the local area of where the championship is taking place.
So it's not just that you run a museum or you take care of the objects. You're not just making sure the trophies are secure and lit right and dusted and taken care of. You're actually promoting the game through the history and through the artifacts that you have here.
Yeah, exactly. That's what one of the aims of the museum is to do that, and the R&D is to use its history to promote golf to a wider audience. And our museum is perfect for golfers. If you're already here in St Andrews playing, that's great. But if you're a non-golfer, we also want to entertain and educate you, and that's what our collections do, but reaching outward as well as a focus.
Sure. And the great thing about the British Golf Museum, I've been in there, it's a very... it's a small museum where you can, run through there in an hour and a half, and the location couldn't be any more perfect. You're just right across the street from the old course on the first tee.
Exactly.
You have a nice cafe up there. I mean, it's a nice way for you to, break up a day. We're just pop in for an hour or two, have lunch, check out the museum. Mm-hmm. What are some of the exhibits that you have there that maybe aren't special or seasonal, where they're just coming in every other month, maybe for the Open or something unique? But what's one of the exhibits or items that is really something that people should make a point to come see?
Sure. We have, as you say, we have temporary exhibitions throughout the year, but our sort of star objects that we have and that I would recommend people coming to see are, we've got a full collection of golf clubs, and for a golfer to see the development of the equipment, so clubs and balls, I think is really interesting, because you imagine what it must have been like to use a hickory club, and some people do come to Scotland and try hickory golf, which is great fun, but to see some of the best clubs in the world on display, so from makers like Hugh Philp, who had a workshop here in St Andrews, right next to the links. He was really known as the best golf club maker in the world at the time, or in Scotland, and is still so highly collectible. And they're beautiful. They're beautiful objects to look at. But also we have the oldest known clubs in the world on display. They're a loan from Royal Troon Golf Club.
Yep, I saw that exhibit a couple days ago.
And no other clubs from the period that they're from exist, or that we know about. They're from the late 1600s, early 1700s, and they're remarkable to see them, to see the length of the clubs and how delicate the heads are. And then we have two heavy wrought irons that are perfect for just getting your ball out of any difficult situations. Sure. And to see those and to think of just how old they are, and the mystery surrounding where they were discovered, and how they have come into our collections and through Royal Troon, it's remarkable really that they're still existing. And also, my favourite objects are the feathery balls. So your listeners might not realise that the original type of golf balls were made from geese feathers stuffed into a leather casing.
Sure.
And yeah, so that side of things, the equipment and the development of that through however many hundreds of years, 500 years, is fascinating. But
so before we get too far down the line of all the things that are in the British Golf Museum, we didn't hit on your history and how you started and got into working there at the museum. So how does one become an assistant curator of arguably the most famous museum of golf in the world?
I didn't think that I would ever be working in golf when my parents, were fans of watching golf on the TV, and that's about as close as I got to playing golf or knowing anything about the history of golf. But I'm local to Fife. I went to school in Anstruther, down the road, and I came to university in St Andrews. I did my undergraduate degree in art history and classical studies. Started in 2001 at the same time as Prince William and a remarkable number of other women and men from all over the world who are all keen to be in St Andrews and be in his class. But I loved my time at university, but again, I think I maybe came down to the golf course once, had no awareness once or twice, maybe go for a walk on the beach. And then after I graduated, I had been working in the best bakers in the town, Fisher and Donaldson, where you can get an amazing fudge donut.
Okay, little plug for them. We'll tag them in the podcast.
But
always looking for a donut sponsor here on the Back of the Range Golf Podcast.
Always loyal to Fishy D's. But I thought, well, I don't want to work here forever as much as I loved it. And I saw a job advertised at the museum, but it was a seasonal museum assistant. And I thought, well, I'll see how I go there. Previously, when I had been at school, I'd done a work experience at the local museum in Anstruther, the Scottish Fisheries Museum, and enjoyed that. And I've always liked going to museums and art galleries and have an interest in history, but I wasn't sure about working in a golf museum. But I quickly realised just what an amazing place it is to work. In my first week here, I met people who had waited their whole lives to come to St Andrews to play golf, even just to visit the town and see the golf course. And, there are people who, it is a pilgrimage, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. And, I'm from here, and it was nice to come to a place where everybody was in a good humour and work in such a top destination for St Andrews, but for the rest of Scotland. And we are the only golf museum in Europe, and so it's your chance really to discover about how golf developed in Scotland and then moved across the world. And I then later on became a curator in 2009, assistant curator, and sort of had on-the-job training from my colleagues.
Sure.
This is how you look after the Claret Jug, that kind of thing.
Well, we're going to talk about the Claret Jug. I see you brought it with you here today. No, you did.
I take it everywhere. No. And then did a museums course at the university here in St Andrews, again part-time. So I've did a postgraduate diploma in that over 2 years, so working and also studying, so that I had that sort of basis in museums. And although I've not worked in other museums, I feel I've got a great opportunity where I am, and working for the governing body in golf, it's, in this country, it's really gives you a lot of opportunities.
Sure.
And my job is never the same. There are bits to it, like anybody's jobs, that are, the daily things to do, but it's so varied, and I'm working with nice people in a beautiful location. So it's, I'm pretty lucky, not to make anyone jealous.
Hey, your office is right next to the old course. That's pretty great real estate. That's pretty great location. But so you mentioned that you have the education, you have the training to be a curator. Some of the items that you have in this museum are hundreds of years old. They're one of a kind. Can you talk about maybe one of the specific objects where there is some care involved, where you have to move it maybe, or you have to do something? Like, what is that process like? Like if you're moving the Claret Jug, I know the Claret Jug travels all over, not just when the champion has it, but there's other replicas, obviously. There's other items in the museum that are, like I said, they're very old. You have to be very careful. Like, what's the process of getting something out? Can you give an example of one of those?
Yes. I mean, when you're moving the Claret Jug, you're aware of its history. You're aware, even if it's our museum replica, it's still a museum object. And with any objects, ideally, you shouldn't be moving them too regularly.
Right.
But for cleaning purposes, or as you say, for events or anything else, you handle things with care and attention to detail, I suppose. A lot of it is common sense, not leaving it on the edge of the table or anything like that. And also handling objects with gloves. Museum professionals have always got gloves with them.
You're wearing them now, which is really strange. I don't know why that is, but no. So,
yes, and one thing that is really tricky to move, more so on the club side of things, is the club have 2 meetings a year in May and September, and in September they have what's called the annual dinner, which is at the end of the 3 weeks of the September meeting. And it's basically a prize-giving ceremony, but also the time when the captain changes from one captain to the new captain.
And this is the Royal and Ancient Golf Club.
It is. Okay. And they meet. The dinner is, there's so many members that attend that they have the dinner at the Fairmont Hotel outside of town, and we as curators have to pack up all the trophies and medals that are normally kept secure, in the clubhouse, and take them up for the dinner. And having to manoeuvre a big silver club that has however many silver balls that hang off the club as a memento of the captains, is tricky when it dates from 1754, and you think, I'm moving a precious object that normally, if you were in a museum, you wouldn't be doing that.
Well, it might move from one room to the other, but you're not packing it up in a car and driving it down the road.
No, and we pack things carefully and to the best of our abilities, but they're living parts of the club's history, so they aren't actually museum objects. They're part of the club's life and are treated in that way. And I'm sure golf clubs around the world have trophies and medals, but for ours, they're particularly special. So yeah, that always gives us a fright every year. Are the balls all still intact and hanging on the club? But it has to be done for the members, and it's being part of the club's history, actually.
Can you give me a story about one of the experiences where you've had to move something that belongs to the club that was maybe one kind of a stressful scenario? maybe keys got locked in a car that had one of the trophies in it, or anything like that, just like, because everyone, look, no matter how great your job is, no matter how amazing your job is, it's still a job, and everyone's job at some point gets really stressful and it's not fun, or things go bad.
No, we're professionals.
Okay.
We never drop anything. We never lose anything. Sometimes, obviously, we have things that have happened that you think, maybe in hindsight, I would have moved that differently. Uh-huh. Luckily, I can say that I've never broken anything, but that if that does happen, then it's something that you just deal with. And
sure.
But I can't think of anything offhand of any drastic.
No horror stories that someone said, no, whatever you do, don't do with this person. There's anything like that. Okay.
Sometimes, when you're shipping the trophies abroad, sometimes things can it's always a worry that they make sure that they come back.
Sure. Now, how long have you been at the museum?
This is my 13th year.
13th year.
Yeah, so
we're
time.
we're going back. So you're 05. So was your first open when it was here in 2005 in St. Andrews?
I just missed that.
Okay.
First open was in St. Andrews was 2010.
Oh, okay, right. That's when Oosthuizen won.
Yeah, and it was really, really busy, very busy for the museum, and really exciting to have the open there.
Sure.
And to be able to watch, him come down on the 18th, and it was an exciting atmosphere and everything. But the last open in St. Andrews in 2015 was our busiest period of all time because we had the delay because of the bad weather and suspension of play, which meant it went on to the Monday. And on the Saturday, we had to act as basically as bodyguards and and doormen because the queues into the museum were so long because people weren't on the golf course because there was nothing to look at.
Right.
So they came into the museum, which was excellent, but we were operating on a one-in, one-out system because it was so busy in the galleries. And I don't know if we'll ever see that again. So it was bad for the people who travelled hundreds of miles to watch the golf, but great for us.
Sure. And I bet that was a stressful time, though.
It was, right. Yeah. And, it's long hours and for everybody involved in running the Open. And I'm always amazed at my colleagues and how they put on this a major event and everything, hopefully everything runs smoothly. But for us, it was really intense. And, we had been closed for a year in order to build our cafe, which is a relatively new addition to the museum. And so we'd been closed and then suddenly we're reopened for the Open, and we had this just huge influx of visitors who were sad and depressed because they couldn't see any golf.
Sure.
But
now, I know you take great care of these trophies when they're in-house at the museum, but, there's this one item called the Claret Jug that leaves your hands, so to speak, and is off for a year with the reigning Open champion. Any scary moments or any calls from a champion that said, hey, we got a little problem here with the Claret Jug?
Thankfully, no. It's great to see champions enjoying the trophy, and Henrik Stenson had it on a jet ski even, which was worrying. But as a curator, you wouldn't necessarily do that. But there have not been any breakages or anything like that. And again, it's a silver trophy. It's delicate. It's a precious object, but they know what they've got in their hands. And luckily, there's, apart from that cleaning episode, there's been nothing terrible that has happened that I know of anyway.
Sure. What are some of the other some of the other exhibits that you have in the museum that maybe a golf fan or a golfer that's in town playing the old course, when they wander in, that they're probably going to be most surprised at that they would see?
I think our costume displays are really enjoyable, and because what you wear on a golf course, golfers are, everyone's got their own individual style, and
sure.
I see a lot of people coming to Scotland and St Andrews wearing sort of traditional looks, because that's where else would you wear +4s apart from on the old course?
Absolutely.
And we have, a costume from the women's game, and it's an area of interest for me. I love how clothing has developed for golfers. Originally golfers would just go out in the clothes that they had. Tom Morris wouldn't necessarily have had golf clothes. He would have had perhaps a nicer suit if he was playing in a competition, but he also had to contend with Scottish weather in the winter months when they were playing. So just keeping warm was probably,
of course,
of what he was thinking about. But for women, we have a great outfit from Gloria Monoprio, who played in the 1933 English Ladies Championship. And although women had been wearing trousers on and off the course, she turned up to the championship wearing a navy pair of trousers that were quite closely cutting, very nicely
Form
tailored,
form fitting.
Yes.
There you go.
And a turtleneck sweater, navy turtleneck sweater, and a turban on her head. She had white makeup, and she just used one clique as she was for the whole of her round. So it caused a bit of a sensation. And at the time, nobody had played, no women had played wearing this style of trouser in the championship, in such a big championship. And the Ladies Golf Union had to issue a statement apologising really on her behalf, saying, this is a drop in standards for the women's game and all that kind of thing that, is so different from today. Although, the women's game, people are always commenting on what the female players are wearing and male players.
Sure.
John Daly's outfits, Ian Poulter a few years ago, his
The
quite unusual
Union Jack trousers.
All those types of things. It's fascinating to see the development of branding as well, with Jack Nicklaus being one of the first people to have his own brand, the Golden Bear, and we have a visor on display of his. And nowadays it's all about who you're wearing, which company you're working with.
Sure.
And we have Tiger Woods' shirts that he wore at the Open when he won, and we have championship. We have objects from every Open champion, usually in the galleries, either a club or an outfit.
And what's the process for that when they win? Do you make a formal request? Do they? What's the process for getting them to donate something?
It was quite challenging a few years ago getting access to the players as museum curators. We don't have direct access to the players, but now in the past few years it's become easier, as we have a colleague in our championship department who works with the players on all levels of their experience throughout the championship, and she has been very good at collating items for us and asking champions to donate something to the museum. Obviously, if it's a club, they may still be using it,
of course,
and don't want to give up their putter or their wedge. But I think we've just received a signed glove from Molinari from his victory this year at Carnoustie, which is in pride of place at the start of the museum. But I think if they know of all the other champions that have also donated,
sure,
hopefully one day they will come and see their object on display.
Well, you just mentioned that the Open was just here in 15. You just had the Senior Open here for the first time at St. Andrews. Did you any notable visitors to the museum during the tournament weeks that you could think of? Usually
the players, when they're here for an Open or any other event, they've got a specific schedule and they're not here to enjoy themselves, they're here to work.
Of course.
However, in 2015, we had a special exhibition about Tom Watson because it was his farewell to the Open, mm-hmm. and we were very lucky to have an evening with him as an exhibition opening with him and his family, and it was really remarkable because he loaned us his 5 replica Claret jugs. So once you've held the Claret jug for the year as a champion, you can have a 90% size replica to keep forever. And Tom has obviously won it 5 times, so his 5 Claret jugs, and to see them all on display was quite amazing, yep. Really. And for him, I think it was quite emotional. It was an emotional week for him to say goodbye to the Open at St Andrews, and we had chance to meet him and speak to him, and then later on we had an event in the clubhouse with the membership, and we had to talk about as curators, we talked about his victories in front of Tom Watson.
Wow.
So I was speaking about his 1983 victory, and that was nerve-wracking, that to speak about a man who's had such an impact on the game in front of him and in front of his family and his friends and a lot of important people in the club and in St Andrews, but it was really special, and I won't forget it. And it was, meeting these great champions. You see the effort that they've put in throughout their career. Again, in Southport, last year at a schools event with the Claret Jug, we were lucky enough to have Gary Player come, and Mr. Player's astounding, and I don't have to tell anybody who's a golf fan what he's done in golf, but also just his attitude to life and the chill. I didn't know how
how the kids would react.
They were young children, primary school age, so 5 to 11, and even the youngest people there were enthralled by him. And at the back of the room, we had dads and granddads and grannies and mothers waiting to meet him and see him, because they were just, it was a small school in Southport and in England, and it was really amazing to have him there. And he just spoke about his life, his career, his achievement in the Open, but also what it is to be a good person and healthy living. And he's famously,
he is a little fit.
He's just a little bit.
He likes his push-ups and sit-ups, and is not ashamed to tell everyone how many he does each day.
So
wow.
So that was really, meeting those two greats was incredible, and not many people do get a chance to speak to them. So
sure.
But generally, of just actually speaking, some of my most memorable moments of speaking to visitors, regular golfers who just are very appreciative to be here.
What's the farthest distance one of your guests has traveled to get to the museum?
I did meet...
maybe to St. Andrews.
Yeah, I did meet someone from Madagascar who was here, and I never thought I would ever meet anybody from Madagascar. Okay. We have people from Australia, from New Zealand, from all parts of Asia who come, and I'm amazed at their stamina, really, whether they're playing golf. You golfers will go around Scotland and play every course in a few days, and you still have the stamina to go to the pub and come to the museum and all these things, and it's nice being appreciated, Right. It's nice that people make the effort to come, and I hope they continue to do so. Oh,
I definitely think that they will. It's the town's amazing, and then just to have that museum right there, it's I always stop by when I'm in town just to see what's new and see what kind of exhibits are there.
Thank you.
Hey,
give you a season ticket.
Works out good. Media press credentials. So,
yes.
So we let's kind of test your knowledge here. I don't think I need to do that, and we're not going to do a trivia contest here. But let's at least get a little bit of history here to most people that may not know. So, can you give me a brief history of the championship belt that young Tom Morris won?
Yes, he won it outright. So originally, people may be familiar with the Open as having the Claret Jug as the trophy, but originally, when the Open was first played at Prestwick in 1860, the 8 competitors played for a challenge belt. And if you imagine it as being almost like a boxer's belt or a wrestler's belt that we have today, so a red leather belt with a big silver buckle in the centre. And it was within the rules of the competition for some reason that if you won it 3 times in a row, it was yours to keep. I think this is kind of bad planning on the committee's
Didn't see young
part.
Tom coming down the street.
I didn't see such a great champion coming. They didn't think that anybody would be good enough to do that. The first winner was Willie Park Senior, a professional from Musselburgh. He beat Tom Morris. And Tom Morris had actually laid out the course at Prestwick, and so he was favourite to sort of go home with the prize, but unfortunately was beaten. But old Tom would go on to win the belt 4 times. But it was his son, Tommy Morris, young Tom Morris, who would win the belt outright. So he was the youngest ever Open champion. He was 17 when he won the belt, and he won it 3 times in a row. So in 1870... it was his 3rd victory, and so he took home the belt. And so you can imagine how proud old Tom must have been for his son to do this. As as one of the founding people of the championship, old Tom, to see his son win this trophy, this belt, this competition for Scottish professionals. It was a major thing. So they didn't have a championship trophy after that. So no event in 1871. But then by 1872 they had commissioned the Claret Jug, but it wasn't ready, and so they gave the champion a gold medal in 1872, and it was Tommy who won it for a fourth time. And so we have Tommy's gold open medal on display, and it's one of the top items in our Open Championship display. It was the first time a champion was given a gold medal, and nowadays, our Open champions receive the gold medal, the Claret Jug, and quite a significant prize fund. But the Claret Jug was then ready at the next Open in 1873 when the championship moved from Prestwick to St Andrews, and the winner was Tom Kidd. So that was the first time it was actually presented to a champion, but it's Tommy's name who appears first on the engraving. So if you ever get a chance to see the Claret Jug, if you look on the belly of the trophy, on this one side we have the start of the engraving, and it's Tom Morris Jr. Who has his name engraved first. But the trophy itself is, it's called a Claret Jug, and it was similar to the types of jugs that would have been used at the dinner table to serve claret, and claret was a favoured red wine, particularly here in St Andrews. Golf has always been about enjoying yourself and having a dinner and having wine and maybe some whiskey and all that, and it hasn't changed that much.
No, that sounds like my Thursdays. So,
and originally the Open was for professional golfers, and the word professional meant that you were a club maker, a ball maker, you were working in golf, greenkeeper, although that term really wasn't used, but keeper of the links,
sure.
Caddy, those were the men that were playing in the competition. And later on they were given prize money, but it wasn't a huge amount.
Right.
But yes, Tommy was such a remarkable character, and it's amazing to think what he might have done in his career had he lived longer, because he died at the age of 25
on Christmas Day.
On Christmas Day. It always makes me cry. So I don't want to start greeting now, but
okay.
There has been a recent film made about Tommy's life and the sort of partnership between him and his father. It's called Tommy's Honour. Yep. And although we weren't completely directly involved, it was just really nice to see that period of history displayed on the screen. And it wasn't completely historically accurate throughout, but it's entertainment and it's a nice film. So.
Yep, absolutely. So you really know your stuff with golf history. So how often are you talking golf when you're not at work? Like, are you following the professional game a lot now as just like personal interest? Do you like, I don't know if this phrase travels over here to Scotland, but do you talk shop a lot when you're outside of work?
Some days you do need a break from golf. I won't lie.
What? Wait a minute. Hold on. No,
I'm constantly looking up all the scores of all the events that are happening throughout the world. No, I mean, for one thing, you do have to have an interest in golf if you work at the Golf Museum,
sure.
or you are representing the R&D if you're going abroad or throughout the country and you're talking about golf. It's not that you're expected to know things,
sure,
but it's just polite, actually, and yes, it's personal interest now. I think I've become very fond of the sport and its history, and I appreciate what people have done before me, and to be able to talk about these figures in golf history is great. And so to ignore what's going on in the world of golf now would be just
couldn't do it.
No, you couldn't. And my dad is, whenever I go home, he's got golf on the TV, so I can't.
Yeah.
And he's telling me all about what's happening in golf, at various competitions. I'm going, yes, Dad, this is my job. I know. But, whether you follow things online or on Twitter or on the television, then, yeah, you have to have an interest. And obviously, as a working on our social media and things to be aware of what's happening in
Right.
golf, aware of golfers as well. So in case somebody does come to the museum and say, I'm whoever from wherever, it's good to have a knowledge of that. And I've even taken up golf lessons.
I was just going to get to that. You recently told me that you've just taken up playing, and you're taking lessons down at the practice range down by one of the St. Andrews Learning Center, I guess is what it's called. So, how's that going?
It's going relatively smoothly. I have had a shot before, and I've been to the driving range. Even when I was a student, I think I did maybe go to the driving range just for a laugh. But this is the first time I've had proper lessons, and
easy game, isn't it? It's just so easy. It's so easy.
No infuriating shots, nothing. No, I think I'm not a particularly sporty person, but I think that golf may be the game for me, or the sport for me. I enjoy being at the driving range and enjoy learning from these expert teachers. They did say on my first lesson that I had a natural swing, so I'm taking that and just running with that.
There you go.
And think, oh, that's it now. And I once got a hole-in-one on the Himalayas putting course for so I feel the signs are all good.
Oh yeah. Well, the Himalayas are actually absolutely no. The Himalayas actually are just as a quick plug. I know it's not part of the museum, but the Himalayas.
No, it's great.
Are fantastic. So the Himalayas is a putting course that's right along. I guess it's right in between the old and the new.
Yeah, just next to the Links Clubhouse,
right
near the second tee of the old. So it's an iconic bit of St Andrews history, and it still is the course for the St Andrews Ladies Putting Club, who are actually the oldest female golf club in the world.
Yeah.
They celebrated their 150th anniversary last year, and we had a special exhibition in the museum for that, because we look after their trophies and medals for them. But the fact that as a member of the public you can have a shot on their course is amazing, because it's called the Himalayas because it's undulating. It's quite a challenge.
Yes.
And as part of their celebrations, they invited myself and my colleague to go and play a match alongside other people from the town, and I don't know what happened, but yeah, I did get a hole-in-one. But it's not, it's not rare, but for me it is.
Hey, you always remember your first hole-in-one. This is a question I want to ask. So you have this amazing job title, and when you're out, whether you're traveling all over the country or out in pubs or meeting people, and and the natural question that people ask when they first meet someone, so what do you do? What do you do for a living? What's your career? When you tell people what you do, can you think of a unique story of someone that just was absolutely fascinated and enthralled with and just would not leave you alone? Like, wait a minute, you get to hold the claret jug, and has anyone just what's the strangest way someone's tried to okay, so how can I get my hand? How can I see the claret jug?
Well, I think you did.
No, that's not. No. This is professional. This is.
A lot of people don't understand, what a curator is in the first place,
right,
and what my job entails. But yes, I mean, if they're aware of St Andrews and aware of golf, they are impressed. My friends have no idea what I do, or have no awareness of the importance of some of the objects we look after. But I have met some people who are just very jealous that that's my job, and that I'm working in St Andrews, and it's just
right.
It's just fascination, I suppose, as
sure,
wanting to know more about the trophy and how it all works, and what the museum does. So yeah, shock and awe
nice.
as to what I do.
Nice. So you have, we've talked about all these amazing exhibits, all these amazing outreach programs that you have, but at the museum you now have the upstairs cafe, which has basically the panorama view of the water and the first tee, and it's a really nice place to pop in for a quick lunch.
Yeah.
Tell me, when did that come to be? Tell me about that.
Before the cafe was built, we had a flat roof, and we all thought it would be great to have a coffee shop because you know yourself, as soon as you get to somewhere, you need a coffee, and maybe a scone. So we built the cafe over a year and reopened in 2015, just as I said before the start of the open. It was a huge building project, and it was time consuming for all of us, but it was really worthwhile. The cafe is beautiful, and we have an amazing view out of the windows, and it overlooks the clubhouse, the beach, the golf course, all of the links, and it's really one of the best views in St Andrews. But we have events in there, and I host lectures, golf history lectures throughout the summer months, and they've been really popular with our visitors, but also for locals, and just sort of engaging the community a bit more, and having a space to do that has been great. But the cafe's open at the same time as the museum, so 7 days a week, and it's a lovely place to come and just, if you're not able to visit the museum, just enjoy the view and have a coffee.
Absolutely.
And downstairs we have facilities for our visitors, and have a shop that sells open merchandise and nice things that, but I think our best-selling objects or items are still postcards. People still love postcards, so. Absolutely. And a golf ball. You need a St Andrews golf ball if you're going home to a friend, so that's what we've got on offer.
That's great. We have a segment at the Back of the Range Golf podcast called the Quick Bucket. Typically, there are questions about professional golfers. I'm going to give you the exact same questions.
Oh dear.
Oh yeah. So we'll see if we can tailor them a little bit. But there's two that we typically ask. So one is Tiger Woods. Jack Nicklaus won the Masters in 1986.
Yes. He was the oldest.
He was the oldest. He was 46 years old. Mm-hmm. Compare that to a major championship that Tiger Woods would win now. Maybe Tiger winning another Masters. Which victory would you think would be the more substantial?
Oof. That is a question. I mean, for Tiger, after all that he's been through or lived through, and for him to come back and win another major, I think would be what a lot of people are hoping for and are willing him on to do so. And in the last wee while, he seems to be gaining form and doing well. So I think maybe Tiger coming back and winning would be my pick. Although I do love the older champions as well. So
sure.
His victory at 46 Nicholas's victory at 46 was amazing. So don't want to take away from Mr. Nicholas.
No, that's a perfect answer. It's kind of split down the middle actually with all the guests we're having on the podcast. So another one is, if you can give a major championship, and we'll tailor it to, if you can give a Claret Jug to any player in history,
ooh,
who would it be?
Ooh, well, I'd quite like to give a Claret Jug to a female champion, a female player, and it's not known that women can enter the Open, and they just haven't yet. So I would quite like to see a female golfer enter the Open and do well.
I was not aware of that.
Yeah.
So a woman can go through Open qualifying?
Yeah, she can enter the Open. So I'm not aware of all of the rules for entries for the Open, but women can play. So I would like to see either a current female champion do well, or perhaps give it to a historical golfer, somebody like Joyce Weathered, who Bobby Jones said was one of the most impressive golfers he'd ever seen. She was a ladies amateur champion, but I think maybe in my lifetime we'll see a female champion of the Claret Jug.
So those are amazing stories. I really appreciate taking the time to share a little bit about the British Golf Museum, how it's important for people that are in town. Make it a point to stop by and see the exhibits, see the cafe, do some shopping, make it a part of your trip to St. Andrews. Hannah, really appreciate the time. Thanks for being at the Back of the Range.
Thank you, Ben.
And I'll See, I'll keep trying to get in that glass case to see if I can just see that.
Never.
Oh, gosh.
Sorry, Ben.
All right. Okay. Well,
maybe one day you'll win.
oh, wow. But, well, I appreciate you stopping by, and we'll do it again next year when I come back.
Great. Looking forward to it.
And there you have it. Another great episode here at the Back of the Range Golf Podcast. Cannot thank Hannah Fleming enough for her time when I was visiting in St. Andrews. If you're heading to St. Andrews, you better put the British Golf Museum on your list of things to do while you're in town. I have their website link in the show notes of this podcast, so make sure you go check that out. Again, if you like the podcast, leave a review, tell your friends, post it on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Let's get this thing in front of as many people as possible. And don't worry, I'll be back next week with another episode here at the Back of the Range.